Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 1967 Mercedes 250S. Up front is a 2.5 liter inline 6 and down below is a 4-speed manual transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this here 250 for a couple of reasons, but mainly the fact that this is a W108 and I absolutely love the look of it. I love the feel of it. And I'm so excited to share this car with you today. But before we get on to anything else, I have a website, ZachPradel.com, where you can buy stickers and other merchandise when it becomes available. You can also submit your own vehicle to be reviewed by me through a quick and easy submission form, and you'd get a video of your car just like this one. And you could read my behind-the-scenes blog to see what I'm filming before it comes out on the channel. But let's get back to that straight 6 under the hood. Well, it only makes about 130 horsepower and is a dual carbureted straight 6, and I love the sound of it. The sound that it makes is very, very mechanical. It has dual carbs. You have to set them up to work in sync with one another. I think that is just so flippin' neat. Now, is it fast in a straight line? No, but if you try to drive this car fast, you're really missing the point. The happiest this car is just sitting, cruising, enjoying the scenery, and the engine is nice and smooth. And so they work in parallel really, really well. Like I said, paired to it, 4-speed manual transmission. It's certainly rather interesting to be driving a manual S-Class, but here I am doing it, and I have to say it's quite the pleasurable experience. It's very easy to drive. The clutch is very forgiving. The shifter is easy to get in and out of gear. It's actually quite a pleasurable driving experience, and I love that about it. Last but not least, of course, the 250S is rear-wheel drive. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have this awesome gauge cluster. On the left is all my levels and temperatures. So I have my coolant temperature, my fuel, my oil pressure, and some warning lights. In the center, I do get a tachometer. Absolutely love that. And then off to the right, I have my speedometer and odometer in the center. I just love the way that these gauges look. The steering wheel is very big and it's thin. However, it has this metal ring on the outside, which is the horn, which is very typical of the era. And again, with the rest of this car, it's just so regal. I love it. Off to the left, I do have some buttons and switches. I have my headlight switches and fog light switches, as well as a little air vent. And moving on to the door, I do have my smoker's windows, which is very, very nice. Latch to get in and out, and my crank for the manual windows themselves. Moving into the center, I do have climate controls. Now, this car was optioned with factory installed AC. However, the unit would just sit underneath the radio, and since it broke, the owner actually swapped it out with a finished piece that just looks a lot nicer. So no AC here in the W108 today, but that's okay. Then we do have the AM radio down below. Very, very basic. But off to the right, I did want to touch on the glove box. Normally, I don't do glove box reviews because almost all of them are uninteresting. However, this glove box is completely made out of wood. That is pretty unique. I don't really get a center console. I do have a shifter, obviously, on the floor, 4 on the floor, and it is really, really nice. Looks elegant and looks great here over 50 years later. I do get a big storage area in the center. However, that storage area does not include cup holders, so the 1967 Mercedes 250S fails the big friggin' bottle test. But then we gotta talk about the seats. First of all, the seats themselves, very bouncy, very cushy, very old school luxury. You know, today's modern luxury seats, they're very hard, they're very taut, they're too sporty. Well, these really roll with the bumps, and I love that about it. However, something interesting is that I do actually get shoulder belts. As you'll see here on the in-car footage, they're not very taut, and the reason for that is they have a very interesting hooking mechanism. This was before the standardization of seat belts. So there wasn't a one class fits all. It was whatever they can get to work, and I guess this is what Mercedes got to work. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 1967 Mercedes 250S, and actually for the first time in my life, I'm saying that the back seat of an S-Class is a little cramped. Now, my knees actually aren't hitting the seat in front of me. My head isn't hitting the ceiling, and that's nice. I'm good there. It's just funny because I'm used to just having swimming pools of space back here, and I really don't back in the 67. So kind of interesting to see that. However, the seats are very cushy, very bouncy. I just have lap belts back here. I do get a center console, which I don't know if you saw that. Let me see if I could do that again. You actually pull it from the bottom, and then it comes out. And this is a really comfortable armrest. This is friggin' sweet. I love that about it. And so you can fold that back up. Nothing really else to really write home about back here, but it's just cool being in the back seat of a 60s S-Class. And I do want to just take a moment, just because I have this like very wide view of the front seat right now. I want to share a little piece of this car's history. This car was actually purchased by Tristan up in Minnesota, but according to the previous owner, he actually shipped it overseas to Europe and drove it around there for a little while and then shipped it back when he was done. So this car has driven through the Swiss Alps. This car has driven through France. That's pretty cool to me. Just the things that this windshield has seen. Pretty awesome. Let's go hop around the very back. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and we'll talk about the looks. All right, so we're on the back of the Mercedes 250S. I know that badge is not correct. I'll talk about that in a second. But in order to get into the trunk, key in all the way to the left, and then push in, and then you can pull up, and you get a giant, giant trunk here in the S-Class. Absolutely love that. Again, with 60s cars, I always point this out, they have such thin mats in the trunk. There's no sound deadening at all, no prettiness anywhere to be seen, which is pretty interesting. But look at how big the S-Class trunk is. I wouldn't expect anything else, and you do get this really cool sticker. You can pause to read that if you would like, if I can get a good angle of it. But that is super, super unique. Love that. And only one key. The reason I bring that up is because American cars of the same era had two different keys, one for the trunk and doors, one for the ignition. Well, the 250S has one key that can do it all. Now we have to talk about the looks. And let me try to explain to you how I felt when I first saw this car in person. Yeah, that was it. Something I do want to note about this car is that this is a Series 1 of the W108. So this car lasted from 1965 to 1967, this exact model year, where halfway through the year they switched it over to the Series 2. Now the 2.5 liter got enlarged to a 2.8, and although you do see 2.8 on the trunk lid, that badge is actually from a different parts car. This is a 250. This car looks phenomenal. It has such grace and presence, and it just harkens all of these emotions out of me, and it's rare that I drive a car today that has such brutal, guttural emotions tied in with it, and yet this does. This makes me miss an era that I was never alive for. It gives me anemoia. You know, one of my favorite places I've ever driven to ever was Newport, Rhode Island. You see, Newport, Rhode Island was one of the happening spots when the United States was founded, but ever since the 1800s, kind of no one gave a crap about it. And so what you end up finding there is a lot of old money, a lot of buildings built in the late 1700s, early 1800s, where things were built with heavy materials, a lot of slabs of stone and granite. And through that, there's just this sort of presence being there. It's not a snotty, I'm better than you presence. It's not a, hey, look at me, look at how much money we have. It's just this cold acceptance of class and loyalty. It's just an incredible feeling, and I get that same feeling driving this car. If you really want to understand this car and how I feel driving it, listen to the song Strange from the Bridgerton soundtrack. Now, I've never seen the show, but their soundtrack bangs, dude. And it encapsulates the feeling of driving this car almost perfectly. This sort of string quartet. You have all these intricate pieces working together, those carburetors. Well, that's just an orchestra under the hood. You have the basses, you have the strings, you have the wind instruments. And sometimes when it doesn't all work together, it creates a giant mess. But when it does work together, it makes something so sensational, it's hard to deny. And that's exactly how this car is. After driving this car, I'm gonna go home and start to call my backyard the South Lawn. Oh yes, we can have some champagne on the South Lawn. Yes. That's how owners of vintage S-Classes refer to their backyards. I love it. It's just this classiness that you don't really see anymore. You know, modern Mercedes are very much a status symbol, and they're not uncomfy. They're great cars, but they just don't quite have the presence of this car. And that's why I love it so much. I'm gonna shut up and just play you guys some footage of this thing because you guys just gotta see it. Huge thank you to Tristan for letting me take out his W108 S-Class. This has been such a fantastic experience, and I love this car wholeheartedly. Man, I might start looking at buying one of these because this is just superb. But huge thank you to Tristan, and I'll play you guys out with some beautiful footage of the W108. Take care, guys.